I have two things. First of all, her comment was if it's only on Shabbat. There's some holidays.
There are some holidays,
Yes.
yes.
Only that you wouldn't do that.
Right.
My other comment is I think that I'm correct by saying that the people, everybody seems to want to know who makes those decisions or how it's created. It's community leadership
That's right.
that agrees on those decisions.
And maintains if there's certain things to be maintained.
That's right. For these are community errands, so they're checked every Shabbat, they're checked before every holiday. There's a lot of money to maintain them. But if I make a personal one, it's my own decision to extend my property. But this is for the community, developed by the community, maintained by the community. So that could be a temple, a rabbi who's in charge, a community board, usually of some kind. So there are all different governing bodies that might be maintaining these. That's a good point.
Would these all be different sizes in different communities? Okay, so.
All of these maps follow something. It could be the river running in Philadelphia.
Yes.
It could be a main thoroughfare in Philadelphia and what happens to be their buildings, telephone wires, and something, etc. It could be, I think there's a train line here. So they use what's in the environment. They don't just put up a road. So a lot of the boundaries here would be unpassable by anybody. So it's a mixture of following the law and what's in the environment and negotiating this custom with contemporary life, which is really part of the...
So they're kind of living things, they're growing and reducing?
Well, once they're set, they can change, but I don't think they change weekly. If they expand them because the community demands it, that's one thing. If they disappear because the community is dispersed, that's another.
If there's no regulation about when that happens, it just,
Right.
I mean, it's
I
not
would
twice a
imagine.
year on the
I would
31st or
imagine,
anything.
no, right.
Are there communities in Israel that do this?
Yes. Those maps are harder to find. Strangely enough.
They want the Palestinians to know where they are.
This, I'm not going to say custom, but when did this all of a sudden, this sort of liberating area maybe, when did that happen?
Well, I'm not a Talmudic scholar, but the literature comes from the Talmud, and that was written in the period of the rabbis, 500 or so. Is that correct? So this is a very
So
long
this is
standing,
ancient. They've been doing this
a long time. The literature itself describes the buildings that they're interconnected. It says, imagine there are sections of Pittsburgh and maybe Greensburg where row houses are touching and they face their backyards that have a way or the garages. The literature describes houses that are touching that have a common courtyard. So the origins of this are very, very local. That I live in a house next to probably my cousin or my extended family, and I want to include this courtyard as my house so that I can go over to that other building and have dinner with them. So if I define that courtyard with gates and cut off parts of the thoroughfare, I've created an extended garden wall. And so this is a modern extension of that. But when you read the Talmud in the section, Tractate Eruvim, it describes what the architecture looked like. And it's very much a densely populated, urban kind of setting.
I'm sure that, well, if it's a community, everybody has to agree, and I'm sure they all agree right away.
That's right.
There are the branches in Judaism. Do the representatives from the different groups, do they cooperate and establish?
Probably
these
not.
parameters?
No, probably not. The Reformed community doesn't live by this, generally. And so whatever the Orthodox are doing doesn't affect them in the same way. There may be disputes among more Orthodox as to, is that permitted? You decided to make this the boundary, but I disagree with you. So I don't trust your Eruv. I'm not going to use it. So you do have those kinds of debates, but it's not usually the more reform or conservative congregations who dispute the minutiae of it.
Now, if you live out in a real rural area with nobody around the miles, does that mean you're restricted to your home?
Yeah.
Probably your own land anyway.
Okay.
Yeah. Your land would have to have a fence.
Or even if you lived within a city, but not within.
Correct.
You'd stay in.
That brings up a whole other set of laws that another body of work is going to address.
It's interesting in an intellectual sense that after thinking about commandments, laws, rules, that you would choose to represent these two general sections. Did you have any thoughts about other sections?
Yes.
Other commandments that would be that could be visualized, and if so, what?
The tack that I'm taking is to find literature and passages that talk about materials. The broader question is, what's the Jewish relationship to materials, to stuff? I'm not interested in iconography and storytelling. Don't know why. But one of the other series is to find these hectures, and then the body of work that's online is to take each of these hectures also represents a company that certifies. So those companies have a place. This one's based in New York, I believe. So there are 25 or so based in New York State. And so I made a map of the country, placing the hectares in the states that they come from. So it embodies this. And just like, for me, these maps illustrate one tradition being practiced in different ways all over the world. The hectare also, for me, has a locality. This one's a bit more national because you can find OU almost anywhere. But when I travel to Miami or Los Angeles and I pick up some food and I look at the hectare, it's a hectare I've never seen before. That it's a much more locally distributed hectare. So I think of what's soul food, kosher soul food look like, or what's Mexican kosher food look like, because these hectares can be more regional than international. That's one reason that map of the various hectares comes up.
I think the OU is the most accepted, and there's a lot of others that aren't accepted by.
It's also true. It's also true.
And there's a publication that has them all listed.
Right.
It shows you which are the real genuine ones.
Which are the most suspect. Depending on which community you're a member of, you may or may not accept different hectares.
Exactly.
There's an interesting commercial, I can't remember the first two things, but it's for Hebrew National, and it ends up with no buts. No ifs, ands, or buts, and it shows the rear end of the cow is not.
I'm sorry. Is this one, the middle one and the end, what do those represent again?
This one?
Yeah.
This is Teaneck, New Jersey.
Okay.
And this is Route 17 running through it, if anyone is familiar. And the website says if you want to cross Route 17, you need to call this number to tell you how. So there is a way. This is Center City, Philadelphia, and the university. This is Center City again with the suburbs, the radiating suburbs. I don't know whether it's off a highway or a railroad, something, whether it's a commuter train.
Would that be the suburbs, east or suburbs?
Northeast, yeah, northeast.
East.
I would think it'd be the railroad,
Probably the
because the
railroad.
major route between Washington, Philadelphia, and New York runs right through these, right beside these communities.
And that's the Schuylkill River on that.
On this right here?
Right.
Thank you.
That's the Schuylkill River, because that divides Center City from where that's actually where 30th Street Station is
Yes.
also, but that's the river.
And this is the community Eruvim, Los Angeles. And my brother-in-law used to live within it, and now he doesn't, so I made fun of him. He's reformed, doesn't live by it. Another one of those. Let's add some personal life.
That's actually string,
Yes, I used thread to stitch the
is it
boundary.
woven in or glued or what?
Just stitched it through the paper.